Dakota Jones. It's a pleasure to have you back on the Singletrack podcast.
Hey, thanks a lot. It's really good to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. And I think the first question I want to ask you is just about your relationship with Chamonix and your relationship with these UTMB races, because the last time we talked around Western States, it struck me that, you were in some ways waiting to do Western States pretty deep into your ultra running career. And I guess I don't know the story of just how long these races like UTMB and CCC have been on your mind. So talk about that. Like,
Yeah.
what's the why now? Talk about the history there.
Yeah, I appreciate the way you phrased that because it implies that I have a plan and I've thought these things through ahead of time. It's never been the case, and I think I've screwed up my whole career because I never planned ahead. However, not over yet. I actually ran UTMB, or I started UTMB two times, once in 2011 and once in 2014, and I dropped out both times, basically because I got tired and sad. And it was actually after 2014 UTMB when I was like, wow, I really need a break from 100 miles. And so I was thinking like, oh, I'll take like 5 years off, which is like the most planning I've ever done. I was like, I'm not going to run 100 miles again for like 5 years. And it ended up being 6. I didn't do it again until 2020. And I think that was good because I feel like I'm better at it now. At least I'm happier at it. But yeah, I'm running the CCC this year instead of the UTMB. I can't really remember how I came to choose that one instead of UTMB. I think it's mainly because I did want to do one of these races. I've been at these races a ton. Like, obviously, it's a huge part of the sport. The UTMB events are like one of the most important races that we have in terms of competition and visibility. And it's spectacularly beautiful. Of course, it's really challenging and really cool. And yeah, I knew I was doing Western States, and so I thought like, I don't think it's really right for me to do two 100-mile races in the same summer. Like, what is it, 2.5 months apart or something? So I figured I'd do the CCC, and even that seems like quite close, but I think it's worked out. I've rested pretty well after Western States. So. Does that answer your question? I was just rambling.
This episode is brought to you by Oladance, wireless Bluetooth headphones which deliver 19 hours of battery life, superior sound, the ability to still hear your surroundings for safety, and an open ear design so you don't get that achy feeling from wearing them for extended periods. I used these earlier this month on my run of the 100-mile wilderness, and if you're curious, head over to oladance.com/ST and use code ST at checkout for $30 off their OWS2 headphones. Also, thanks to Pillar Performance. Pillar, spelled Pillar, is a sports micronutrition company that I was introduced to after having Sam Parsons from Tin Man Elite on the show a while back. I use their pineapple coconut flavored triple magnesium product, which delivers high potency magnesium glycinate for better sleep and added recovery during my training blocks. If you'd like to try Pillar today and you're an American-based listener, head to thefeed.com/Pillar and use code Singletrack for 15% off your order. For international listeners, use that same code Singletrack for 15% off, but go to pillarperformance.shop to do so. It does. No, it's great. And I think before I ask this next question, I want to backtrack a bit and just talk very briefly about Western States, because I think most people would agree with these larger races like Western and UTMB. It's really hard to win, or it's really hard to podium if you don't take some pretty big risks. And I think you sort of implicitly acknowledged that when you left it all out on the course earlier this summer. It was a fun performance to watch. And I think on a certain day, you might have caught lightning in a bottle and won the race or been right there with Tom. But the fact remains that you have to do those kind of things in this day of age to be successful. I think what I'm curious about is your reaction or your response to that type of day. Like, after you reflected on it, did it increase or decrease your motivation to keep getting after it? Like, do you feel like there's fire in the belly to essentially run that back again at CCC?
Definitely, yeah. I felt really motivated. Western States was a super cool experience. I didn't have the race that I would hope for, like I went really hard and then blew up at 100 kilometers, which is not super awesome. It's kind of embarrassing sometimes, but like, really, I don't care. I had a good time. I worked really hard. I did the best I could. That was the day I had. I finished the race. I stayed positive. I think that like over the last few years, I think especially last year running Hard Rock and Javelina, I just kind of got a lot more confidence in my ability to race and run these distances, and like gives me confidence to be able to not just finish the race, but to like push hard. And so I tried that at Western States, and it didn't pay off. Mainly, I think, just because I wasn't fit enough. Like I think Western States is super fast, super runnable. It's 100 whole miles, and if you don't train, I think really consistently for a ton of running, especially downhill running through the spring, then you're not going to be able to succeed. And, I feel like a race like Hard Rock is really, really hard, but I feel like you can almost get away with not being on like top fitness sometimes because you're just hiking so much. It's like more about power and strength, where it's
Yeah.
like Western States or these more runnable races, you have to super run the whole way. Also, it's more competitive than Hard Rock just because there's more people there. But yeah, so I went out at Western States and I didn't have the day I wanted, blew up. But it was the kind of thing where in my brain I was like, that it's kind of embarrassing to blow up, but it's also like I don't think what I was doing racing that aggressively was unreasonable or wrong. I think it was just I just didn't have the fitness to do it that day. But you know, I'd like to think I could do it if I had a bit more fitness next time, and so probably do the same at CCC.
When you think about your approach to these races, when you think about your approach to, the biggest races on your calendar each year, are you someone that has to do a certain type of training or a certain amount of training to give yourself permission to run hard on race day and really compete at the front of the race? Or do you feel like you're somebody who, because you've had enough experience in the sport, because you've, gone to the well before, or, really pushed yourself before, that maybe at this point, even if things didn't go like perfectly according to plan in training, you could get away with some things on race day?
Yeah, I think that I always have these great ideas about how to race strategically and intelligently, and then I get in the middle of it and I'm competitive and I'm excited, so I just tend to push. Um, and that, like, I kind of knew, I suspected at Western States I maybe didn't have the fitness, but I pushed hard anyway. Earlier this year, I ran the Gorge Waterfalls 50K, and I definitely wasn't fit enough to go hard, but I went super hard, and I made it like halfway before I blew up. I feel like that's just kind of my strategy. Like, I should probably think ahead better on this stuff, but I like to race. I like to push hard. I don't race a ton, I think, and so when I do race, I tend to like be motivated to push. And so yeah, like I know what kind of training I want to do, and I have a pretty good idea usually going into a race whether I'm fit enough for it or not. But there have totally been
Yeah.
times when I was fit enough for a race and didn't have a good day, or vice versa, times when I didn't feel like I had the fitness and just happened. Like actually, Transvolcania this year was a good example of that. Like I didn't feel like I had the fitness I needed to do a good job at Transvolcania, but I ended up winning and running a good time. So I guess all that to say, it's hard to trust even myself.
And maybe this is more for the listeners and the viewers out there. In no way, shape, or form am I doubting what you may be able to do or will do on race day. I'm just absolutely fascinated by the psychology of having to repeat this process of convincing yourself to suffer for that long on race day. Um, you've got a beautiful location behind you right now. What's your lifestyle looked like these past 4 to 6 weeks? If I
Yeah.
had to guess, you've been training pretty specifically for this race. Thanks to Brooks for their support of our UTMB coverage. I used their Cascadia 8 way back in 2014 when I was introduced to trails during my thru hike of the Appalachian Trail. So this is pretty cool. I've been using their new High Point collection in the field, even during these interviews, as you can see here, particularly their waterproof rain jacket and pants. I think they work well in settings beyond inclement weather. They're just comfortable. They're stylish. I've also been wearing the new and improved Cascadia 17. Everything is on point. Head over to brooksrunning.com/Singletrack to check it all out. Also, thanks to Morton. Morton fueled over 80% of my run during the 100-mile wilderness earlier this month. I used 25 of their hydrogels and 10 of their 225 C bars. They all went down easy, never created palate fatigue, and made me feel good, I think, in large part because of the natural ingredients. These are also the same products used by top athletes like Tom Evans and Kilian Jornet. So head over to Morton.com to take a look and maybe even try some of it all for yourself.
Yes, I've been in Europe for about a month now, and I've been kind of off and on doing different things, but currently I've been staying in a van with a friend. Um, in Italy, kind of traveling around northern Italy. And it's been really, really cool. It's just like traveling around and seeing some new places that I haven't been to before. 'Cause I've been to Chamonix several times, and it is so spectacular. But it's not the only spectacular place, so it's fun to check out some new places. 2 weeks ago, I spent the whole week in just outside of Chamonix with the Nnormal team. We had our first team training camp, and so I was doing a lot of running there and working with the team on lots of different things. But yeah, currently I'm actually literally at the border of Switzerland and Italy, um, because my SIM card works in the European Union and Switzerland is not in the European Union.
Yes, yeah.
And so like I'm on like my tethered my phone to the internet for this.
I think another question on that front is just, this race will be on the live stream. I'm very excited personally to watch you race. Can you provide any hints or suggestions or expectations as to how we'll see you racing on race day, like your style? Do you anticipate, regardless of how you're feeling or anything like that, that you'll be out there
cool.
and pushing at the front? Like, are we expecting fireworks from you no matter what? Like, what are the expectations there for you?
Yeah, I'll go hard for sure. I feel like these interviews, it's always like a competition with everybody else to see who can sandbag each other the most. You know, you're like, oh yeah, I feel fine, but you never know. I don't know. Everybody's training hard. Like, whatever. I mean, I've been training hard. I feel like I'm super fit. I've had some incredible runs. I'm super, super excited. I think most of all, it's like the training that I've had the last month or so has been really fun. And so I've gotten to do the kind of training I love the most, which is just like a ton of really long days and a lot of vertical and exploring these new mountains and trails. And when I look at the stats on that, it's like it's really satisfying. Like I did a shitload of vertical, and I had pretty good distance, but like because I did so much vert, I did less distance. But like I honestly feel like I'm as fit as I've ever been, or as strong as I've ever been. And sometimes it doesn't work out, but if I'm able to like really rein myself in this week and next week and like sleep well, eat well, not train too much in these mountains, then I think I could be up for a good day. And then in terms of strategy, since you asked that too, yeah, like I want to go out a little easier. I think that Claire Gallagher won this race, the CCC in 2017, and she was telling me to not race at all until you get to Switzerland, which basically means go up and down 2 big climbs before you start like considering it as a race. And that's really hard to do, especially in Europe where they go real hard from the start. So my goal would be to like go a good pace, but not super intense until I get to like La Foulie, which would be like 40K or something. I don't know. Maybe that's 30K. I should look at the map. But then once I get there, then especially the last 3 climbs from Champex-Lac and Friant and Valourcine, like really try to push those.
This episode is also made possible by Features, makers of my favorite trail running socks. They're durable, they're stylish, and they're comfortable. They're trusted by many of the best athletes in our sport. So if you'd like to give them a try, head over to their website, grab a few pairs, and use code Singletrack20 at checkout for 20% off your next order. Also, thanks to Kodiak Cakes, makers of my favorite pancakes. Kodiak has been at the center of so many memorable post-long run group breakfasts for me. And I don't just rave about the great taste. They are also 100% whole grain, and they're packed with 14 grams of protein per serving. That helps immediately with the recovery process. So head over to their website, get yourself a few boxes of their mix, and use code Singletrack15 at checkout for 15% off your next order. Yeah. I appreciate the sandbagging observation, and I think maybe in my next line of questioning for other athletes, I'm gonna have to get creative about how to work around that default. But I appreciate you taking the question head on. Last question I have for you is, I guess it's about footprints. It was really cool to see you in your element earlier this summer in Salt Lake, emceeing that Patagonia event, and I think I'm just curious, like, what have been the big summer projects you're working on in that arena, and what are you stoked on right now?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so Footprints, the camp that I organize where we help runners address climate change with their own personal projects. So we're putting on our main camp, our focus camp of the year in Vermont at the end of September. So it's it's like 3 weeks after CCC. So I've been doing a ton of work on that, like while over here. I'm constantly on these calls and emails and all kinds of work for that. I mean, it's several hours a day for sure. And fortunately, I have a ton of really good help from friend Nate Bender, and especially we also just one of the things that we're most excited about is not only do we have this camp where all these runners have climate action projects for their community. We have amazing mentors who help develop these projects throughout the camp, but we've now developed what we call the community engagement program, which is basically how we support these people after they leave the camp. Because we have this really inspiring, exciting experience at this event, at the camp, everybody's together, working hard, and then you go home and you fall back in your own habits. So we're in the process of developing this big program for people to continue being supported with mentorship, resources, connections, ideas, everything for about a year after the camp, and then they kind of graduate from the process and hopefully come back and like start supporting other campers. And so we've been really developing that program. It's been fun.
Right on. Where's the Vermont camp located? I was just actually in the Waterbury sort of Burlington corridor this past
Nice.
a couple of weeks ago. Beautiful country. Seems
Huh.
like a great next place to host. So where in the state are you going to be?
Yeah, it's in that same sort of region. It's in northern Vermont, but like a few hours east of Burlington. So we're going to kind of meet in Burlington, but then we
Okay.
go to a town called Craftsbury. And Craftsbury is pretty well known for people who are Nordic
Yeah.
skiers. Yeah, because
Cool.
we're doing it at the Craftsbury Outdoor Center where they Nordic ski.
Love it. Well, Dakota, always a pleasure to chat. We'll link to everything, including the footprints work and the show notes. Looking forward to following your race in a few days here. And yeah, always great to catch up. Appreciate your time. And
Hey, thanks a lot.
any final thoughts or stuff to leave the listeners with before we go?
I don't know. Thanks for following along. Yeah, it's really we're lucky to be able to do this. I don't have anything to leave. I'm sorry. I'm grateful.